It's Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. Could we finally get some answers to the JFK assassination? The debate over immigration and judicial tyranny is heating up, and why Christless conservatism is always chaos. Next on the AM Update.
It is hard to imagine anything more un-American.
An old law? Not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy.
I call it magic mind computer, any computer which can just make money out of thin air.
And I can't be the only person wondering, it's a little after noon, and don't you all have jobs?
I feel like it's mean-spirited now. That doesn't mean that I want transgender people in women's sports or women's spaces.
President Trump says that we're going to get the JFK files today.
While we're here, I thought it would be appropriate. We are tomorrow announcing and giving all of the Kennedy files. So people have been waiting for decades for this, and I've instructed my people that are responsible, lots of different people, put together by Tulsi Gabbard, and that's going to be released tomorrow. We have a tremendous amount of paper. You've got a lot of reading. I don't believe we're going to redact anything. I said, just don't redact. You can't redact.
Trump made those comments during a board meeting, or he was at a board meeting at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, his administration has filed a blistering response in federal court to the ACLU regarding deportations of Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang members to El Salvador. They're calling for the day's hearings to be vacated. The Trump administration said in a response, quote, plaintiffs cannot use these proceedings to interfere with the president's national security and foreign affairs authority, and the court lacks jurisdiction to do so. The court should vacate the hearing and de-escalate the grave incursions on executive branch authority that have already arisen. Of course, what this is in response to is Donald Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 and some federal district judge we told you about yesterday trying to block his invocation, rightfully so. Again, this was Donald Trump's executive right. This is within his power to do so. Some federal judge stepped in and said, no, I'm actually the president now. On Capitol Hill, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar says the invocation of an act, the aforementioned act that was signed into law by John Adams, a founder of the country, is un-American.
It is hard to imagine anything more un-American than that. The Trump administration's immigration policy is a threat to immigrants like criminals. America is too great to fall prey to Donald Trump's anti-immigrant agenda. We need to restore basic humanity to our immigration system.
In response to imbeciles like Ilhan Omar and the aforementioned federal judge, Border Czar Tom Homan was asked what he thinks about using a 200-year-old law.
An old law? Not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
But some would say. Mic drop from Tom Homan there, the border czar. Here is Deputy Chief of Staff for the White House, Stephen Miller, who at this point I think is just confirmed. He is the killer nerd of the Trump administration. Here he is on CNN.
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy. When the president is exercising his Article 2 powers to defend the country against an invasion or to repel a foreign terrorist that is unlawfully in the country, he's exercising his core Article 2 powers as commander-in-chief.
Is Venezuela invading the U.S.?
This is a very important point. This is a Title 50 authority. It's a commander-in-chief authority. So just to ask you a simple question, you talk about how the system works. Does a district court judge have the right to direct or enjoin troop movements overseas? Yes or no?
Well, Stephen, my question, if you could answer my question first,
in other words,
is Venezuela invading our country in a way that would apply this way?
So I'll answer yours and you'll answer mine. Under the terms of the statute, Tren de Aragua is an alien enemy force that has come here as detailed at length in the proclamation at the direction of the Venezuelan government. The statute says that a president has the ability to repel an invasion or predatory incursion that is directed by a foreign
state
government.
or a government, right? Are they a state or a government?
This would be Yes, it is documented. The TDA was sent by the Venezuelan government in the proclamation. And here's an even more important point. Under the Constitution, who makes that determination? A district court judge elected by no one, or the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy? The president and the president alone makes a decision of what triggers that determination.
So do you then think we are actually...
That is Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, being questioned by an incredulous Casey Hunt of CNN. And you're seeing now the Trump administration is starting to beg all of the right questions. If some district court judge ruled that every person named Aaron McIntire had to hop on one leg while smacking myself in the face and saying, "Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself?" Is that a lawful order of that court? Of course not. That's ridiculous. And you hear Stephen Miller starting to beg those same sorts of arguments there. Meanwhile, at Doge, Elon Musk was interviewed by Senator Ted Cruz the other day and had this bombshell about something called magic money computers. Listen up.
One of the things you told me about is what you call
insane.
Magic money computers at the Treasury. So tell us about it, because I never heard of that until you brought that up.
Okay, so you may think that the government computers all talk to each other, they synchronize, they add up what funds are going somewhere, and it's coherent. That the numbers, for example, that you're presented as a senator, are actually the real numbers.
One would think.
One would think. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they're not totally wrong, but they're probably off by 5% or 10% in some cases. So I call a magic money computer any computer which can just make money out of thin air. That's magic money.
So how does that work?
It just issues payments.
And you said there's something like 11 of these computers at Treasury that are sending out trillions in payments?
They're mostly at Treasury. Some are, but there's some at HHS, some there's one or two at State, there's some at DOD. I think we found now 14 magic money computers. Magic money computers at the Department of the Treasury, just issuing payments. Apparently, our Treasury is just a bottomless pit of money. A couple quick items here. President Trump has canceled the Secret Service protection for both Hunter and Ashley Biden. Also, in a post on Truth Social last night, Trump said, quote, "After years of being held captive by environmental extremists, lunatics, radicals, and thugs, allowing other countries, in particular China, to gain tremendous economic advantage over our country by opening up hundreds of all coal-fired power plants, I am authorizing my administration to immediately begin producing energy with beautiful, clean coal." So it looks like coal is back on the menu. Missed this late last week. Here is Vice President J.D. Vance speaking to a gathering of people talking about American manufacturing. He says he was heckled on the way in.
We've got this great event, this great facility, great business, and of course great workers. And I'm sure all of us saw there were a few protesters outside. And I can't be the only person wondering, it's a little after noon on a Friday, and don't you all have jobs? Who are the people? And I think that's one of the reasons why we've got to rebuild American manufacturing and support great companies like Vantage Plastics, because we want those people to get off the streets and back to work. It'd be good for them, and it'd be good for everybody else, too.
All those protesters, don't they have jobs? Well, that's why we got to rebuild the economy and the manufacturing base and get them off of the streets, says J.D. Vance. And now this, before our first break, a Houston area midwife has been arrested for allegedly providing illegal abortions, the first such arrest under Texas's near-total ban on baby killing. Maria Margarita Rojas, 48 years old, who identified herself as Dr. Maria, is charged with the illegal performance of an abortion, a second-degree felony, as well as practicing medicine without a license. That's according to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Paxton said in a statement, quote, "In Texas, life is sacred. I will always do everything in my power to protect the unborn, defend our state's pro-life laws, and work to ensure that unlicensed individuals endangering the lives of women by performing illegal abortions are fully prosecuted." That is a step in the right direction. Of course, illegal abortions should be a misnomer, and I pray I see the day when that is true. When we come back, Chuck Schumer cancels a book tour, updates from the state of Florida, and more about Gene Hackman's death. That's all coming up next.
Six quad one wins.
And that was combined with an undefeated record against Quad 3 and Quad 4 opponents. 3 wins against top 10 teams and the 24th toughest schedule in America. West Virginia deserved to be in the NCAA tournament. This was a miscarriage of justice and robbery at the highest levels. Now, who was the last team to get into the tournament? Ahead of the Mountaineers. That would be the University of North Carolina. Now, let's see how their resume stacks up.
That is the voice of sports shock jock Sparky McDougal. No, actually, that's West Virginia's governor, Patrick Morrisey. Come on, man. I mean, are we serious here? That is the governor of an entire freaking state, sounding like he is some sort of sports DJ. I don't even know if sports DJ is a thing, but some sort of sports shock jock on your local sports radio station. Come on, get real. I get West Virginia totally was robbed, not making the NCAA tournament. But to have your freaking governor come out and sound like that, can't we do better? Democrat Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is being mocked and ridiculed for canceling stops on a book tour after angering Democrats who wanted him to fight against a Republican funding bill. Schumer released a statement announcing that several stops on the book tour were canceled and postponed over quote-unquote security concerns, but did not offer details. CNN reported that angry leftists had planned protests against Schumer and his decision to end opposition to a Republican House budget bill. Schumer had argued that a government shutdown would only help Republicans, but the leftist wing of the party, which is basically the entire party now, excoriated the decision and blamed the Democratic leader. Even some Democrats had reportedly offered to immediately write a check for a primary challenge from Democratic Socialist Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. So Chuck Schumer, he's got a new book out. He wants to go on a tour. He had to cancel that tour because of security concerns from his own party's base. Yeah, can't make this stuff up. In the Sunshine State, Attorney General James Othmeyer says he's not going to defend Florida's ban on under 21 years of age gun purchases. He says he's not going to continue to defend at least one law against a challenge. In a statement on social media Friday, James Othmeyer said Florida's post-Parkland prohibition on people under the age of 21 buying guns was not something his office would keep litigating, and said, quote, restricting the right of law-abiding adults to purchase firearms is unconstitutional. He went on to say, if the NRA decides to seek further review at the Supreme Court, I'm directing my office not to defend this law. Men and women old enough to fight and die for our country should be able to purchase firearms and defend themselves and their families. The National Rifle Association and Radford Fant, son of former State Representative Jay Fant of Jacksonville, filed a suit back in 2018 challenging the state's then new prohibition in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act on people who aren't old enough to drink legally from buying guns. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals released its ruling on Friday upholding the state law. Attorney General Othmeyer says he doesn't want to defend. So once again, this is at least the third or fourth different example in about 3 weeks that James Othmeyer has been on the job as Attorney General in Florida of him absolutely going into the mouth of madness and absolutely tearing crap up. Good for him. Update on what happened with famed actor Gene Hackman and his demise. More like what happened with his wife. Preliminary cell phone records revealed Gene Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa Hackman, did not die on February 11th as once believed. Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office now believes she actually died on February 12th. There are still some tests and autopsies or toxicology results still pending. What's more interesting about this story is what we're learning now about Gene Hackman's will. The succession of the considerable estate of Gene Hackman is now in question after the discovery that his 3 adult children are not named as beneficiaries to his estate in his will. Documents obtained by Entertainment Weekly show that Hackman named Arakawa Hackman, his then wife, as the sole beneficiary of his estate and successor trustee of the Gene Hackman Living Trust, while Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie, his children, identified as Hackman's children in the will. The actor appointed Arakawa Hackman as the sole successor to his trust and estate. The recent findings that indicate Arakawa Hackman died several days before her husband throw open the question of who will inherit the estate. So what was already a sad and really odd story and end to this famed actor's career and life now gets even stranger, as it's revealed that, obviously, he was very much estranged from his children. Even with that estrangement, though, what kind of person leaves nothing in their will? Absolutely zilch in their will. to their children. What kind of person does that? Let me know. At Real Aim Update on X. And now here's this. Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff. He's not done yet this morning. I want to play you this clip. It's about 2.5 minutes long, where he absolutely drops the hammer on Andrew Weissman, who is defending illegal alien gang members. This is about as anti-American as it can get.
But let me play this first from somebody who I know is not a favorite of President Trump. This is Andrew Weissman, who's a former top Mueller prosecutor. Of course, it's not a huge surprise that he didn't like this operation. He doesn't think it's legal under the act that you just mentioned, Stephen. Watch.
We're not at war with Venezuela. We're not at war with the gang that is the subject of the executive order. There is no invasion that is going on. And you also have to show that the people you're removing are actually part of that gang, even if there were an invasion or a war. And this statute may, in fact, be very unconstitutional.
So the judge has to be convinced that these individuals aren't real. I mean, it's a huge group, and nobody's going to miss any of these people, but they're quantifiable. So can you prove that these individuals were linked with Tren de Aragua, and that Tren de Aragua is part of a Maduro operation, Stephen?
So first of all, Andrew Weissman is an absolute moron. He is a moron, and he is a fool, and he's a degenerate. Andrew Weissman has devoted his career to putting innocent Americans in jail, taking away their civil liberties. He was involved in the Mueller coup against a democratically elected President Donald J. Trump. Weissman should never be on TV anywhere. He should hang his head in eternal shame for what he's done to this country. And now he's up there shilling for people who rape and murder Americans. That's who Andrew Weissman is. I met the mother of Jocelyn Nungary, Alexis Nungary, who President Trump honored at the State of the Union, named a national wildlife refuge after her daughter. Tren de Aragua terrorists took that 12-year-old angel and they tortured her to death. They sexually assaulted her. They stripped her and they dumped her body in a river. That's who President Trump has deported from this country. Behind every single one of those terrorists was another future rape victim, another future sex trafficking victim, another future murder victim. And most importantly, every one of those people was here illegally. They have no right to be in this country for 1 second longer. They are illegal aliens, they are foreign terrorists, they are alien enemies. And the law at the heart of this issue was signed in the founding generation of this country, the same generation that wrote our Constitution. People say, it's an 18th century law. You know what else is an 18th century law? The Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights of the United States. The founding generation gave us this law, gave President Trump this law to repel this invasion from our country.
I mean,
and it was all detailed in the proclamation, how this gang was sent here by a foreign government, and President Trump is sending them out of this country.
Tell us how you really feel, Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff. That is about the best defense that you could possibly ask for of Donald Trump's actions invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And yet there are still people in this country who are working on behest of violent criminals, terrorists, in order to stop Donald Trump, President Trump, from making sure those people cannot create another Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungary or countless victims of illegal aliens. Just think about that. Those type of people inhabit our country, and you cannot share a country with that. When we come back, Christless conservatism, really Christless anything, always leads to chaos. I'll talk about that next. And finally, air analysis. I've really stopped using the term conservative or conservatism, and I've instead started using right wing. The reason for this is pretty obvious. There is no such thing as conservatism, at least not that I'm aware of anymore. Conservatism largely has failed to conserve anything. Instead, what we have are a bunch of not leftists, or what I usually say, right-wingers. A hodgepodge of individuals and coalitions who really don't know what they believe, except for one thing: they hate communists and they hate Marxists. One of those individuals, I would say, is one Tommy Lahren, who has been a mainstay and a pretty outspoken voice on some issues that I really like, and some of her commentary I really enjoy. Well, Tommy Lahren said recently in response to the flap last week we told you about between Congressman Keith Self and Tim McBride. Don't need to go into that all over again. Here is what Tommy Lahren had to say.
There is a representative who is transgender. Sarah McBride was purposely referred to as Mr., and it's getting a lot of traction. I feel like it's mean-spirited to do it just to be mean. Now, that doesn't mean that I want transgender people in women's sports or women's spaces, because that has an actual physical, tangible impact.
So you think it's mean-spirited to tell a mister that he's a mister. Yet you don't want those same misters to end up in women's spaces and women's athletics, Tommy Lahren. That is absolutely chaotic. Let's take this to its logical conclusion. Let's say that mister winds up in your female space, whether that's a restroom or other just protected space. You think it's mean-spirited to tell that person to leave? You just said you don't want them there. Square this for me. If you think it's mean-spirited to tell a dude to leave a women's bathroom, you can't then turn around and say that you don't want those dudes to be in those women's spaces. That's chaotic thinking. But Christless anything always leads to chaos. It always leads to chaotic thinking. And that's exactly what you heard from Tommy Lahren there. That's not conserving anything whatsoever. What it is, in the end, is just Christless and nothing more. Anything that doesn't have an actual underpinning in truth, and I'm talking about capital T truth, will always lead to these types of chaotic diatribes. That's going to do it for a Tuesday. Remember, coming up this Friday, it's the first ever special edition of the AM Update. I'm going to tell you now what the name of that special is. Expert versus AI. Coming up this Friday. Won't want to miss it this Friday. We'll be back at it again, though, tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.